Welcome everyone to our second community focus event for the Troy Wynantskill potential consolidation conversations. Before we begin, just in the event of an unlikely exit, we're going to exit out those doors, down the stairs, and straight out the front of the building. Please do so if we need to in an orderly fashion. Tonight's focus is going to discuss the tax implications of a potential consolidation between the two systems. We will also review the conversation that we had at the previous in the inception focus meeting. We're going to talk about the implications that a consolidation will have in a both financial and an instructional capacity. And as a reminder, we have another follow-up, our third meeting tomorrow evening at Wynantskill in the gymnasium at the Gardner-Dickinson building. And as we conclude with the presentation from Dr. Yotis and Mr. Carmelo, there are a few communication issues that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention. And then we will end the presentations with questions from the audience. We are recording this event and it will be posted on the Feasibility website hosted by Questar Boses. And I'm going to jump in with just a few introductions. I'm Bob Bridenstine from Schmidt Leadership Group. I'm the lead facilitator on this project. To my left is Dr. Brian Schmidt, also of the Schmidt Leadership Group, providing some technical assistance with our ongoing study. To my right is Mr. John Carmelo, Superintendent of the Troy system, and Dr. Mary Yotis, Superintendent of the Wynantskill system. We have a number of board members from both school districts here. We have Harry Hodgino from Questar Boses filling in for Dr. Cruz, who is currently traveling. And we have a number of community residents from both school districts in the audience. So thank you, and we appreciate you coming out on a rather rainy evening. So let's jump right in. So at the last meeting, we had a conversation down in the auditorium, and we discussed, and this was widely distributed and publicized, the considerations for reorganization, where we actively discussed the facility needs and improvements on both campuses. We talked about absolutely must-haves. We talked about needs at the Gardner-Dickinson building and on the Gardner-Dickinson campus. We talked about gyms and securities and athletic fields and classroom spaces and technology spaces and how this could occur as a result of a reorganization between the two systems. Just as a quick reminder, reorganization would allow the system to recoup 98% aid for any approved capital project that meets the state ed requirements, and that provides a significant opportunity for both systems to both modernize and provide instructional programs for students in the 21st century. And the systems talked about that. Mr. Carmelo gave a brief overview of the potential tax implications with a 5-year look. And we will dive into that a little bit deeper this evening. We also spoke at great length about the staffing model moving forward, which includes no reductions of staff on the existing Gardner-Dickinson campus, operating the Gardner-Dickinson building as a pre-K-8 building with additional incentives. And we talked about school choice, which will be a significant priority topic in the next focus group meeting.
The flyers are over there. If you didn't get one, you probably should pick one up. All that information is out there.
Thank you, John. And with that, tonight we are going to dive much deeper into the tax and financial implications of both systems. We're going to talk about the impacts, not just from a financial standpoint, but on the concerns and impacts that the current status has on the Wynantskill community, and particularly the Gardner-Dickinson campus. We're going to identify needs, and then we will jump in with some communication issues. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Yotis, who's going to begin.
Thank you.
And Dr. Schmidt is going to work the PowerPoint. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Hello? It's on?
Yes,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, I gotta really get into it. I don't know how I'm gonna do
You
that.
want me to hold it?
Yeah, thanks. All right, let's see if this works. I can speak loud. Thank you everybody for being here, and I thought I would start off by really just giving you my story for 5 years. This is my 6th year as superintendent, the superintendency at Wynantskill. Before that, I was a building principal for 8 years, so 14 years in the district. But I'm going to speak on the last 5 years because that's what I knew as the budgets and going through the finances. So I want to just share my story. This is when I started, September of 2020, during COVID. We had been out of the building for 9 months, and this is when I started my superintendency, and it was so much fun. I share this story, and I was looking for some photos, and I wanted to find a picture. Someone asked at the last meeting, like, where's all the COVID money, right? Districts had so much money in COVID. And I wanted to share that. Wynantskill really did not get a ton of money. We ended up with $700,000 over 2 years, which it's not a little bit of money. It was great. We appreciated, but over 2 years, it wasn't a ton of money to do what we needed to do to keep the building open. And it certainly paid for some staffing, and it helped us out during those 2 budget years. But it wasn't like a tremendous amount that helped us coast through. So I was looking for a photo, and I went through my phone because I was looking for a picture of all the technology that we bought, because we had to buy Chromebooks for every student on the chance that we were going to go remote and teachers needed laptops. So I'm looking through my phone to find that middle picture of the crates and crates of technology that came in, and obviously scrolling around my phone, I literally got the chills seeing all these photos. In the bottom right corner, here's a little preschooler. We couldn't use the tables. Kids had to be 6 feet apart at desks. We had to buy furniture, tables, chairs, all those foolish stickers that went on the floor, 6 feet. It was just thousands and thousands of dollars. And, the picture of the school bus, I forgot about that. You can only put 20 kids on the bus. We had to hire extra drivers, extra routes for the kids. We had to have the buses fogged and sanitized every day. I had a company come in and fog 20 buses. There was so much expense, and even the supplies, the masks, we were one of, honestly, I don't know another district that was in school 5 days a week, full days during COVID. That first year we were able to come back. We had enough space in the building to space out the students. We needed extra teachers, we needed extra furniture, but we stayed in school 180 days that first year when most districts had kids coming in on alternate days, 2 days, 3 days a week. So we're very proud of that, but that was an enormous amount of money and effort that we put into that. Again, I'm proud of it, but I wanted to point that out because a lot of that money was spent. Again, we had an additional 5th grade, a middle school teacher, a middle school TA, a social worker, to deal with all the mental health issues that we had, and we bought a new ELA program, which we wanted for several years and spent $30,000 on that to help with the learning loss from the kids that were home for 9 months. So what happened during the last 5 years? Again, we just said the COVID money pretty much phased out quickly after 2 years. The next initiative, we worked to right-size the district. Currently, we have one section of preschool, we have one pre-K, we have one section of kindergarten, one section of first, we have 2 sections of second, and unfortunately that's probably going to go back to one section next year. So our enrollment every time, right now our cohort is between 18 preschoolers. We have 18 preschoolers right now with no one on a wait list. We have 20 students in our younger grades. So that's our new cohort, which used to be 40 to 50, is now 20. So we took one teacher away from pre-K, K1. Mrs. Mahoney, she has a partner this year, she loves it, teaching 2nd grade, but the smaller section behind them, that one teacher will move out of 2nd grade. So pre-K through 2 will be one section. 3 through 8 has remained 2 sections because of our friends coming in from Little Red. So Little Red is increasing population, their school district is booming, we're shrinking, but we're benefiting from that and bringing those kids over. So that Last year, Gina had a little over 20 students. They go to third grade, 10 students from Little Red joined. Now we have 30, and we can make 2 sections. So that's our 2 sections. And unfortunately, it's making bigger class sizes in pre-K. Well, pre-K is always 18, capped at 18. But kindergarten through 2, which we would love to see that to be our smallest grade level, is now our biggest grade levels with over 20 students, 22, 23. But we right-sized the district. When teachers retired, we did not replace them. We no longer have 6th grade teachers. We worked to revamp our middle school so that our 7th and 8th grade teachers cover 6th grade now, 2 sections of 6, 2 7, 2 8. And 2 of our teachers have to teach an accelerated 9th grade course, so they're teaching literally 4 grade levels, our math and science teachers. So our middle school teachers are pretty stretched, but that was something that we could cut right there. We increased our security and our mental health resources with all the threats to school, the swatting. We added the security officer, the SRO. Increased need for special education. We had to open up a self-contained kindergarten classroom last year. That was a huge, it was a big undertaking for our small district to have so many students come in with such high needs. So we opened up a classroom, had to add special ed teachers, aides, materials, furniture. So this is the 2nd year of that classroom, which is thriving, but again, it's just expenses that come up that are very difficult for us. The last thing, I say here is the decreasing enrollment. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our enrollment, as I just did, with the sections getting much smaller. Here is Wynantskill. So this is taken from the SA 100 report. This comes out of state ed. We are a K-8 district, according to the state. There are 18 K-8 districts in New York State. We are one of them. So for these numbers, I'm just showing you here that total at GD is 285, not counting pre-K. We do have 18 preschoolers. Preschool is it's a program we're offering the district, but that doesn't make us a different school than K-8. So these numbers, so you just have to be careful when you see different things recorded. This is from the state K-8. So we have 303 students at GD right now, as of today. 18 pre-K and 285 in the other grade levels. The blue column, I just teased out Wynantskill so you can see. Wynantskill has 238 students. That's K-8 plus the 18, so 256 is our number of Wynantskill residents. Little Red I put on the side just so you can see, again, they are constant, they are growing, they're booming, and we love it because we welcome them and we treat them just like they are our kids. But for this purpose, I just wanted you to see if Little Red didn't come, we truly have 238 students, K-8. The next slide, and we had this slide for a demonstration, Capital Region indicators, just really to show that it says the population in Wynantskill is down almost 18% from 2013 to 2023. The next slide is just Rensselaer County enrollments. These were taken from New York State, NYSET. NewYorkState.gov, right? So this is a database. There are 12 districts in Rensselaer County. They're almost down 500 students in the last 4 years. So again, this is nothing new. It's not just Wynantskill. Every school in the county is losing enrollment. The next slide shows, here's just New York State, right? So these are just 4 years. This is the data that was available, down almost 100,000 students in the last 4 years. So as we know, New York State as a whole is losing families. Families are having less children. And I point this out because, again, it's everywhere, but when we start looking at what happened, right, because I think that's what people want to know, what's happened in the last 5 years, why are we at this point, why does Wynantskill have no money, what happened? I mean, this is life. We have struggled, and it does come down to the enrollment. The enrollment is tied to our foundation aid, which is our biggest aid source. We have about $2 million that we count on from state aid, foundation aid. This next slide just shows, what's happened in New York State. Governor Hochul last year proposed some changes in the foundation, how schools are funded with the foundation aid. There was this whole study done. If you saw this, was on the news. This was like a lot of advocating, different groups, legislator, superintendents. We were advocating at the New York State Ed building. There was the threat to take away hold harmless. Wynantskill is a hold harmless district, meaning the state can't give us less in foundation aid than we had the year before. So that keeps us safe. You can only have the same or more. What the governor was saying is we're going to take away hold harmless, and here's your aid run. And when it came out, it showed that Wynantskill would take quite a loss. We were all advocating, please don't do this, please don't do this. The governor pulled away and restored hold harmless, and we got 0. But let's advance to the next slide and let me quickly, and again, I think someone had asked for, how do you figure out this foundation? I think it was Mr. Denny, and I said, well, here's the 100 pages that State Ed has posted, and if you can figure this out, let me know, because no one knows how this comes out. But I'm going to give you just the simplest lesson that I got from it. If your enrollment goes down, that's a problem because it's based on enrollment. If your property wealth in your area, not the kids in your building, Wynantskill, if the property wealth goes up and the income wealth goes up, those things are factored in combined wealth. And for Wynantskill, the property values are going up. The income looks like it's going up from the people who live in Wynantskill, and our enrollment is down. We don't have much poverty. Our numbers are below 20% free and reduced lunch to our building. And we, at this point, don't have any English language learners. And there's money for that. So every aspect of this formula looks to be working against Wynantskill. Just one more thing on that, going back to this. The interesting fact of this, which I just heard from State Ed on a conversation, is if Wynantskill annexes with Troy, that naturally, using their numbers and the income combined wealth ratio, will bring $4 million of foundation aid a year into Troy, instead of the $2 million a year that we get. So they will double the money just by changing the district name, which is, it's good for you and just shocking for us. So $2 million, we've been flatlined for about 15 years. The state's saying Troy would get $4 million a year based on the same about 250 kids, which again would not be for 15 years like the incentive aid, it would be forever. So even if you think about the 241 million is over the 15 years, it'd be an additional 60 million in foundation aid. That would be on top of the 241. It's just a fun fact I just learned. All right, here's the next page. This is just to show you in some of the aids that we receive. BOCES aid, high-cost aid, transportation aid, building aid, those all fluctuate each year. They're expense-driven, so you have to spend the money to get some back. And our aid ratio back is anywhere usually between 60 and 65% of what we get back on the money we spend in transportation or textbooks, BOCES aid, things like that. The foundation aid is, I point that out on the top, because that is what we count on. That doesn't fluctuate. It's not driven by how much you spend. That's what we get. That foundation aid has flatlined for about 15 years. This year, it was an additional 38,000. If you want to flip to the next page. This shows you the amounts in this foundation aid that I'm talking about that are hold harmless from when I first got here until now. So you can see we had an increase in 21, 22, 54,000, 45,000, 56,000. And then there's that 0 year that I started talking about when the governor said, we're gonna take away hold harmless. So I don't know if you can see it's small numbers, but the number in parentheses say minus $177,034. That's what we got on the foundation aid. So when we open it up and say, oh, in January, the governor's gonna give us this money, ours had a negative 177,000. That would have been if they took hold harmless away. So we were pretty worried. We had to create a budget based on we were going to actually get less money from the state, like a lot of that, like 177,000 is a lot for Wynantskill. In the 12th hour that came out that she was going to not give any, there was no additional money coming in, but you could have the hold harmless, which means you would get the same 1.9 million that we got the year before. So that's when you say zero. And when I tell you we were grateful for zero, we were very grateful for zero. Since then, for 25-26, we got a 2% increase, which was $38,000. And again, I'm grateful to keep what we had and for an extra $38,000, but $38,000 does not really move the needle and buy you anything at a school district. The next slide, again, just a quick slide to show, it's really the declining enrollments, the less the state aid, we can't keep up with the expenses. And so that's what happened. Nothing went wrong terribly. It's just been happening for a long time at Wynantskill that because of the way the foundation aid and the district just doesn't get aid from the state like it maybe once did. Not in my time, certainly. The next page, I'm just going to give you the large gap. So we have a large gap this year, right? There's always been a little bit of gap. Like I said, my first couple of years, we had some extra COVID money. We had to buy some extra people to help us out. We were able to do that. When that money fell off, we got rid of the extra folks we had that were literally like a 1-year TA to help us through COVID at the middle school. We got right-sized the district, as I showed you. When 3 teachers left, we didn't fill them. When a special ed teacher left, we didn't fill the spot. Literally went through the staff and said, who has the degree in special ed? You have to teach special ed. Not where we wanted to be, but we really were conservative with what we had. And if someone left, we weren't hiring them back. We just through attrition let them fall off and saved a lot of budget issues that way. Last year was the first time that we had a large gap that we just couldn't come up with a way to cut any more than we've already cut over my 5 years. But even before that, there was lots of things cut out of the budget before I even took over. So here's the picture of our faculty this year. And so I want you just to think about that, just rolling over the faculty alone, the faculty and staff, not just teachers, everyone in the school. So everybody you saw pictured there, bus drivers everywhere. The staffing obligations from 1 year to the next are $375,000. That was last year. That was the TRS, ERS, salary increases, health, pharmacy, everything. Approximate number, but it was about $375. So just for staff. So keep that in your brain. And the next page. And so this just shows you, we talked about the foundation aid kind of flatlining, all the other aids that, fluctuate. The tax levy, right? This is raised by the taxes. This year it was a little over $6 million for the levy. But just to show you there, that increase in the tax levy, plus the additional state aid came up with $177,000, right? So that's new money that we took in from the state and the taxes, our 2 biggest sources of revenue. And so that leaves a shortfall right there of 197. And that was, again, the scenario I'm giving you is just to roll over the people. That's nothing else. That's not our service contracts, the garbage, the electric, heating, fuel, busing, food, everything goes up. I'm just talking about even just the salary increase of $375. The next page, again, showed from 24 to 25 our increases. And again, School taxes are about 6.1 million. The state aid was 3.3. So that state foundation aid, we count on 2 million, and the other million is that that aid that fluctuates. The other services are tuition and transportation, mainly from Little Red, the school district. We provide their transportation. Again, we have 47 students in the building right now from Little Red. The other little interests are bank accounts, building use, E-rate. But if you look at what our revenues brought in, we're about 10.7, and we needed to get to 11.3, our budget. So there we had the shortfall of 578. And when I tell you that number was much bigger, it was more like 1 million before we really started cutting any other little thing we could cut in the budget. The next page, this just shows you, this is what's not in the budget, right? So we can't make the salary, we can't make that from what we collect in taxes and the state. These are things that are not in the budget. This New York State bus mandate, like we don't even have an account. We don't even talk about it because it's just impossible to think that we're gonna have a fleet of 20 buses turned over in 10 years when one bus costs $175, electric bus is gonna be over $500. And forget about the station that I need to put all these plug-in, whatever you call the plug-in things. We rent space at Yankee Trails. We have not got an answer from New York State whether we can put any infrastructure in a third party because it's district money that would be improving the Yankee Trails. That hasn't even been explained. We hired a consultant a couple of years ago who has literally applied for every grant under the sun, and Wynantskill never qualifies for any of the grants that I think they think that we are a wealthy district, and most of the grants and funding and even the electric bus mandated funding sources we found were driven by need. So they went to the neediest districts first, and we don't look like a needy district, even though I'd like to show them the gap. They don't see us as needy. Electric buses, technology. This photo, I sent to my assistant Kyle yesterday. I said, I was looking for a picture of, do we have any Chromebooks because we always joke that the kids break the Chromebooks, even though I say you can't break the Chromebook, there's no funds to fix the Chromebooks. I said, is there any Chromebooks that we could just put as a photo here? So he came back with this one, and I nearly fell out of my chair. I said, is this real? He said, I just took the picture. These are broken Chromebooks that we need to replace or fix. And there are no budget lines for technology. We don't have it in the budget. We have a software budget that's pretty small, but we don't have a technology budget. Usually if there's money at the end of the year, we pray to God that there's something left over, and we'll buy a grade level some of these Chromebooks. But there is not a budget for Chromebooks. There's not a budget for technology. I even have here supply, furniture, rugs, classroom supplies. When I started, even when I was principal, the previous superintendents had cut supplies. So teachers used to get like a couple $100, and now they just don't. We buy what we can and have like a shared closet, but there's no supply. If they need a rug, we bought rugs with some of that COVID money that went with the reading program, because the reading program said, hey, you should read to your kids and you should have a rug. We never had rug money. We never had furniture money. And I do thank John Carmelo for letting me dumpster dive anytime I hear that something's up for grabs from Troy. You can ask any of my families, like there's been no furniture line, not in the 14 years I've been there. Every teacher got a new desk a few years ago, and I'm looking at one of my parents who helped me tremendously when a bank was going out of business, and Paco and my husband spent days picking up, I don't know, probably 40 desks and chairs, so every teacher got delivered a new desk. And their desks were probably built with the school in 1969, no lie. And I can't say enough, Mandy Neely and Paco McCarthy, our whole building is like, has new office chairs, probably 60 chairs we took out of that bank. Trash cans, we took the trash cans, because we didn't have money for trash cans that were all busted. There's no line, it's no joke. And we're constantly looking for things like that. And there's a new hotline now. We made a connection with somebody from Troy, and they said, hey, there's some things we're throwing out. And I am in the car here, and I'm looking out back. And we just redid our remedial room with all new, lightly used shelves in the reading room. And they were thrilled, because normally I get them on the side of the road if I see them. These are things that, again, we work really hard, we don't complain, we just make it work. But these things are not in the budget, ever. Next slide. So at this time, we're just gonna look at that tax levy. And for those of you who pay Wynantskill taxes, I know that it must feel like you are strapped. And this is not to diminish what you are paying. So there's $6.1 million we collect in the tax levy. From year to year, you can see that increase was $115,000, which again, I'm sure it feels like you're paying a lot, but for us, when we think of new money, right? So we needed $377 just to roll over the staff, $115 with the state shutting off the funding doesn't cut it. So here's the increase on the tax levy. These are on the allowable growth factor and the consumer price index. We received that from the state. We've gone out for the maximum allowance each year. We never went over the cap though. And so these are the amounts: 119.95, 119, 123, 134. This year, 115, right? So it's just not enough. The next page, this is work that Dr. Rick Timms has done. Rick came and presented in May. He really did our 5-year planning. He looked at the next 5 years. When I started, he did a 5-year outlook plan. We were okay. I had him redo that. This is year 6 for me. He's done that. This is what he found. He presented this in January. We had a video that he presented. I had him update this on Monday. He made some people were asking in the community, since we talked about the feasibility, what will happen to our taxes and what happens if this vote goes down. So I had Rick up some of this from May to now. So these are numbers as of Monday. This is a 2% increase to the tax levy, which is typically what we do. This is what he presented in May. This is when we said, okay, we're gonna have some issues. The total expenses is that red line up top, and you can see the expenses go up every year. The blue line is the revenues. So you can see the revenues is more like a flat line, and you'll see the gap. So in 2030, there's a big gap. Those red and blue lines should be together. The bottom, the green line, shows the difference between the blue, the amounts of the difference between the blue and the red lines. So as you see, in 2025, we were short $578,000. Next year, it'll be $540,000. Again, this is updated as of Monday. We had a little extra money that we saved and brought over for the capital loan interest we didn't pay. So we had like an extra $100,000. We brought that over. So he redid all the numbers so that it's to every penny that we have in our bank account. Next year is a little less, and then you see in 2027, we need $970,000. In 28, we need 1.4 million. We need 1.9 by 2029. 2030, we need another 2 million. So just to let you know, as of this moment, we have about 2 million in reserves. 2,170,000 $786. We also carried over an unassigned fund balance. We're allowed to carry 4% over. Again, I told you we didn't pay that interest, so I carried over $558. We're a little bit over that 4%. Harry, don't tell anybody, don't tell the state. We don't want to get in trouble for that. We carried over a little too much. So that's a total of $2.7 million. So just to put in perspective, that's what we have. But those are restricted balances, like restricted reserves. One's for insurance. We ended up paying a Child Victim Act last year for almost $500,000 for something that happened in 1970. It just happens. Like, life happens. That's why we have these reserves. Repair, retirement, when somebody retires, they get paid out their days. So these are restricted reserves, so I don't even think we have 2.7 in a just slush fund. These are reserves for certain categories. We'd have to have a community vote to spend these reserves. They're not just a la carte, you can't just pull from them, but our total savings with all the reserves is 2.7. Even if we were able to pull it all out, if you look at these increases, we would spend that by 2027, 28. The next slide is a 6.4 increase. When I asked Dr. Timms, someone asked the question at one of our optimization study, everybody's asking the question, what would happen? I asked Rick Timms to give us a modest increase over the cap. What could we do? A minimum increase, a minimum. What would that look like? He came up with 6.5. It said 6.5 increase in the Q&A. He redid it Monday. He said 6.4 because I brought that extra 100,000 over. Okay. So as you see, the red and the blue lines are closer together, but they're still not together. They're closer together for a couple of years, and then they start splitting off. At the bottom, you will see 2025, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. By 29, we will have a gap of 750,000. It did not help. It helped a little. It bought us more time. This does not work, but it gets us closer to 2030. Remember, he's doing a 5-year plan for us. With the first scenario, we have about 24 months. With this scenario, we have about 48 months before we would run out of our money, our reserves. But as you see, those are the numbers with a 6.4 increase. So on the last page here, I just put with a 2% increase, and then there's a slide with a 6.4% increase. And unfortunately, nothing changed. It's a Band-Aid. It the 6.4 buys us another day. The 2%, we still have to, in this 5-year planning, he has that I carry over from one year to the other 600,000. I don't know that could be, I don't know that that's possible. 600,000 year to year is what we have to put in to the next year. I don't even know if that could happen. As I said, life happens. We have a high schooler, that just said they need a medical transport. We're doing an emergency pass of the board, and that's 150,000 this year. I mean, there's 150 out of that 600 I'm supposed to carry over. That will be a lift. No matter which way we go, he has in his planning that we carry over 600,000. We're going to talk about school choice next week, but just to say that now, school choice will be something that will be cut out of our budgets. Quickly phasing that out. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow, but for just to give you some numbers, right now, 24-25, Wynantskill, let's see, the 24-25, Wynantskill paid 1.6 million in tuitions. Okay, so the tuitions vary from 2,000 to 13,000. It's great to have all this choice, but the district cannot substantiate this varying tuitions. the transportation, there's a whole lot of things that go with this. So school choice is something that would have to be cut. There would also be using up some of the reserves and quickly reducing some of the staffing. Again, I told you that we went to one section, so there's no more groups of 12, there are 20. I truly don't have any more faculty that we can cut. Again, people wanted to hear what would be the scenario. It's not good. We haven't wanted to put this in print. I haven't wanted to talk about this or even think about it. I don't want to think about losing our SRO and being the only school in, without a resource officer in today's times. Like, that's not an option for us. Our social worker who's full every day with kids in crisis, like, we don't want to consider that. Remedial teachers, pre-K, we guess we don't have to have a pre-K, even though all the research shows everyone will benefit from having a pre-K. Special areas, library, after-school clubs. I mean, it's really not anything we want to even think about. So that's where I'm at there. The next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent John Carmelo, and he's going to talk to you about a third option, which could be that districts take advantage of the reorganization aid from New York State.
So before Mr. Carmelo jumps in there, I want to just respond and kind of clarify just a couple of things were said. With regard to the electric bus mandate, if you were to engage with an outside entity, and you mentioned Yankee Trails, if the district were to improve upon that site, you need a minimum 15-year contract and a referendum, and then the taxpayers are responsible for 100% of the payments. Okay, so if you go off-site and improve another area, it's a 15-year at a minimum extended lease to do that. The second part to that is in regard to exceeding the tax cap. That requires a 60% vote or it fails. And so I would just ask for the members of the audience and folks that will view this eventually, think of any time you can get folks in a room and get 60% of them to agree on anything. This would be for an extended period of time to keep increasing the taxes over a 5, 6, etc. year period, where exceeding the tax cap would require 60% of the voters to approve that year after year after year. And the last thing, Dr. Yotis had mentioned the word cut, and I just want to clarify, a cut means a reduction, eliminate means eliminate, okay? So a cut of a section of 3rd grade where there are 2 sections means there's only 1 section. Eliminating the SRO means there's no SRO. So I just want to clarify that cut means, in most cases, a reduction. Eliminate means completely disavowing that as an option, because sometimes when folks hear cut, it has a different connotation. I just kind of wanted to clarify that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Carmelo.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary. Great job. There's a lot of information there, but it certainly paints the picture. So the third option, and actually we'll go back, if you don't mind, Brian, we're going to go back to more that slide in a minute, right? What the 2 options there are a 2% tax increase, which is pretty normal, or a 6.4% tax increase, which is already, and like Bob just said, that would require a supermajority. That's a number that I'm not sure about the Wynantskill taxpayers because I don't work with you, but the Troy taxpayers would have a hard time approving a 6.4%. And that's not a one-time increase. That's 6.4% for 5 straight years is that plan. So again, I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that. Okay, now you can go back to. So before I get to option C, I just wanted to talk about, and I did this a little bit last week, but I just kind of want to repeat it. In Troy, when we're doing our budget, I don't think it's exclusive to Troy, I think every district does this, but we're really, really proud of the way we do it. And so when we're developing our budget, we meet with all of our principals, we meet with all of our directors, and we ask them what do they need in their buildings and in their departments so that the students can perform better, right? We're always looking for how can our students be more successful, how can they all reach their full potential, right? And we do that by balancing these two lenses, right? We're trying to, the left side, be educationally sound. What does every student need so that they individually can reach their full potential and achieve success? And at the same time, be fiscally responsible, right? We want to give every kid what they need, but also we're always trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money, right? Always keeping our taxpayers in mind. And we've done that. We've done it well. Our state situation was really tough for a long time. We were one of those districts, if you read about the news, that were underfunded $9, 10, $11 million over a number of years. And then again, in the last 4 or 5 years, when Governor Hochul came on board, she made a point to fully phase in the foundation aid. You probably heard that in the news a bunch of times, right? It was a 3-year phase in so that every district got what the formula said. When that happened for us, we started getting a better influx of money, right? And we got some money in COVID, like Mary was talking about. We got more than $175,000, but we'll leave it at that. Whenever we got an influx of money, we always did 2 things. We did the left side. What do our students need with this money to help them all be successful and reach their full potential? And the right side. How do we give back to the taxpayers so that we're always keeping them in mind too, right? And so that's what we got, right? So again, I'll go to the left side one more time. What do the students need to reach their full potential and achieve success? That's staff members, right? That's how many staff members to keep the class sizes low. I talked last time a little bit. With our COVID money, one of the things we did was have co-teachers in our classrooms, right? So we had a bunch of classrooms at the elementary. Mr. Nardo's here right now, principal of Carroll Hill. She still has 4 or 5 of those Carroll Hill co-teachers. That's 2 certified teachers in a 3rd grade classroom, for instance, right? With a normal class size, 16, 18 kids, with 2 certified teachers. You think about the attention and the direct instruction that those kids can get when there's 2 certified teachers, right? So that's educationally sound, right? That's staffing that kids need to be successful. What programs can we put in place for kids to be successful? That's academically and outside of the classroom. All our after-school programs that I talked about last time, right? Karate, lacrosse, girls flag football, basketball, soccer. In every one of our elementary schools, every single day after school, those kids have that option to do one of those sports, right? Every single one. Gardner Dickinson and this merger would have that same thing, right? Programs like that helps the whole body, helps the children be successful in the classroom because they get a chance to do things outside the classroom. And what supports are needed, right? We all know kids learn at different speeds and different levels, right? So we have tremendous support programs. We have more than one social worker in every single one of our buildings, special ed staff throughout the district in every one of our buildings, helping kids who struggle a little bit make sure they get the additional supports that they need. That's all educationally sound. That all costs money, so we balance that with the right side, and that's the proof right there. And I think I said last week, I know I say it during our budget presentations, I don't know if there's a district that does the right side better than us, right? We think about our taxpayers all the time. That's our last 10 years of tax increases, right? That's the actual exact 10 years of one, from 2016 to 2000 this past year. We have a 0, we have 5 different zeros in there, right? Somebody said last time, well, if you have so many zeros, I know that districts, when they do that, now they got to go out and have a balloon increase, a big, huge increase. We don't do that. We strategically plan our zeros when we can do it, right? And when we can't do it, we don't do it. But you can see there, we go 0, then we go half, then we go 1.5, 1, we went up to 2. Then we got some of the phase-in money, so that was 0, 0, 0. COVID money, another 0. And last year we talked as a board and the district office, right? It was time we had to go up a little bit, right? The state, as Mary was talking about, was a little bit different with their formula. That hurt us actually from the year before. So we struggled a little bit trying to make ends meet. So we struggled in a way that we couldn't go out 0, right? We didn't want to, we had an attrition plan of our own, but we didn't want to, have an attrition plan in place and have 0. So again, we give back to the taxpayers when we can, and then we ask for a little bit from the taxpayers when we have to. And so this past year we went out 175. Quick adding that up, it's less than 7% total over that 10-year period, right? That's fiscally responsible. But at the same time, throughout that 10 years, our kids are getting what they need to be successful. So again, really, really proud of balancing those two lenses. I wanted to repeat that slide. So that's Mary's slide there. Again, a 2% increase on the left side, where Mary said it herself, right? That means in 2027, 2 years from now, you're out of money. I mean, districts can't be out of money, right? That you can't survive. She already explained, did a great job explaining just the salary increases and the benefit increases. The aid and the tax revenue that you're getting in the Wynantskill district can't cover those two things. So the only way to cover it is with your fund balance, right? With your savings account. Just like if you had a personal, you had income coming in your own household, and then you had expenses that were more than that, eventually to pay your car payment, to pay your mortgage, to pay whatever groceries, you got to dip into your savings. Well, if your savings is gone, then you're out of luck, right? That's what happens in the Wynantskill School District in 2 years if you stay at 2%, right? And everything stays the same. Even if you go up to it, in my mind, an untenable 6.4% over the next 5 years, you still run out of money in 2030, right? That's what that slide says right there. That's what those two columns say. That's not a great situation to be in, which is why we're here, right? Which is what that optimization study was all about, which is what, this is months and months of research. This is months and months of looking through reports, having meetings with all the stakeholders, right? This is what this is. This is the reason that we're doing this. There's a third option, and it's an option that's an unbelievable opportunity that came to us, right? Mary finishes the optimization report. It says, hey, think about merging with Troy. And so we start talking. We're talking a little bit before then. I mean, this isn't something that we haven't joked about even for a little while. We meet with state aid planning, which is like a state organization that helps with districts to plan finance stuff. They give us the number. And we thought it was wrong. We actually, Bob and Brian actually checked with state ed to get them to send an email. Is that number right? $241 million. I mean, you saw the numbers that Mary was throwing around, 175,000, 375,000, $241 million we get if we just combine the two districts. I mean, financially, the two options, three options, I mean, it's clear as day to me that this is an opportunity in front of us that we have to grasp, right? So there's the third one. I did it in detail last week, but I'll do it again. The first year would be a 5% tax levy reduction for everyone. For people that are currently Wynantskill taxpayers, for people that are currently Troy taxpayers. Eventually, if this happens, we'd all be the same taxpayers, right, in one district. But a 5% reduction in the tax levy for each one. After that, 4 years of 0, 0, 0, 0. So 5% reduction, 0%, 0%, 0%, 0%. Think of the planning you can do now, right? When you know even 6 years from now, your taxes in 6 years will be 5% lower theoretically than they are right now, right? Think about every year you think, oh man, I wonder if the taxes go up, where the taxes go up. I'm telling you, your school taxes will go down and then stay flat for the next 5 years. Someone brought up last time, well, what happens in year 6? And then distorted my answer a little bit. All I said at that time was, who knows what the economy is going to be like in year 6? Who knows what the world's going to look like in year 6? But we're still going to be getting that money, right? The only reason we went out 5 years is because it's hard to predict 6 years. We think in our models, and again, we do a lot of strategic planning on the finance stuff especially, we think with our models we probably can do 0 for, and Mr. Hotel, my assistant superintendent of business, probably scared what I'm going to say right now, but we probably can do it for 6, 7, or 8 years. We're not going to promise it, because I said last time also, we're only putting stuff on paper that we really are absolutely sure we can deliver, and this we definitely can deliver. But probably there'll be a few more years of zeros. We're not going to give zeros when we can't give them, right? But we are going to give them when we can, and that's what I just showed in our last 10-year history, right? That's what we do. So you get 5% reduction the first year, you get 0% tax increases for the next 4, and then all of that's, one more time back for the other one, Brian. Then all of those things at the bottom of the slide can stay, right? Nothing goes away. Nothing at Gardner-Dickinson goes away. All of the things there, SRO, social worker, class sizes, remedial reading, pre-K, all of that stuff that Mary's gonna have to have such hard decisions with the Board of Ed members to try to figure out what to cut, because there's nothing left to cut. They're down to the bone. You're down to the bone, right? You don't have to worry about that. Go back there. Gardner-Dickinson remains open. It remains a PK-8 school with all the improvements that we can make. And Bob mentioned, or Mary mentioned, one of you mentioned 98%. On any capital improvement you make, that means you get 98 cents for every dollar you spend on a capital project, right? Any improvements you want to make, we're talking about technology, Mary, we have technology everywhere, right? We will make sure you have the same technology upgrades in Gardner-Dickinson that we have here throughout Troy, right? And we'll do that at no cost to the taxpayers, right? Not only get a 0% tax levy increase throughout the year on your budgets, there will be no tax impact on any capital improvements we make, because we get 98 cents back for every dollar we spend, right? It's an incredible opportunity. No reduction in staff levels, and not only no reduction in staff levels, with the money, we'll give additional supports, additional programs, additional staff. I just talked about the after-school programs. I talked last week, because I met with the staff at Wynantskill. It was a great meeting. I really enjoyed meeting with them. We spent about 2.5 hours together. One person was a music teacher that came up to me. She said, I'm the only music teacher here, so we have band, but we can't have orchestra, we can't have chorus. Those kinds of things don't happen in a big system, right? We can put a music teacher over there to teach chorus. We can put a music teacher over there to teach orchestra if the demand is there. We wouldn't do it for no reason, but if the demand is there to increase the music opportunities over there, then we do that. If the demand's there to increase art opportunities, then we do that. Right? So not only does staff remain, we get additional supports, programs, and staff. And then the emotional one I know is the school choice one, right? Mary just talked about $1.6 million a year you spend on school choice when you're in that kind of financial trouble. Boggles the mind. But we hear you. We hear people are complaining about that a lot and are really emotionally attached right now to school choice. And so our wording on the flyer from last week, and it still holds, is we're going to come up with a reasonable, practical, sustainable transition plan. I don't know what that means yet. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, and I look forward to that conversation. We've gotten a few emails. We've gotten a few people, at last week's meeting, a few people come up and had one-on-one conversations with me, which I appreciate. I'm always available for that. And just talking through, like, what does that mean? A reasonable, practical, sustainable transition plan. It can't go forever. We're a public school that has our own high school, right? We're not going to spend $1.6 million to send kids to a different high school. We have the best high school in the region, in my opinion. But even if you don't agree with that, I think people would agree you're not going to pay $1.6 million to send kids to a different school. But we will do that for a little while, for a transition period. I don't know how long that is, and that's what we'll have to figure out tomorrow with more discussion. But that slide and the slide right before it is really all you need to see that this is an opportunity that we really can't pass up. Next one. The next two are just kind of graphic forms of what does the two tax and they asked Mr. Hotel and I to kind of take a look. This is Wynantskill. The red line is the 6.4 that Dr. Rick Timms said needed, and remember, that's not even needed enough to sustain forever. That's needed enough, 6.4% increase for 5 years, and then you're still out of money. But that red line is that. The green line is the tax plan that I just said, which is a 5% reduction, and then all zeros. And in the first year, I'll need my glasses for this. In the first year, it's a $600 savings for the average taxpayer. Right, average taxpayer in Wynantskill this is. In the year of 31-32, which is 5 years down, when we're still at zero, and that's 6.4, 6.4, 6.4, 6.4, 6.4. The average savings, average taxpayer savings at that point is $1,800 a year. And that gap, you can see the gap, it just keeps growing. That $1,800 is going to be $2,000, and then $2,100, then $2,300. The overall 5-year difference between if you do this and don't do this is a little under $6,000 total dollars. $6,000 for each taxpayer is going to pay extra to not merge than they would pay to merge. The Troy taxpayers also benefit from this, not quite as much because the equalization rates and the tax levels are different, but the first year savings for the Troy people is about $200. In the 5th year, it's about $400. In the 6th year, a total savings there is $1,600. Still good money, right? Still great money. We already keep things pretty low in Troy, which is why the savings is not as significant for the Troy taxpayers. But for the Wynantskill taxpayers, certainly is. I put the slide up again just to be able to reiterate. We got some more conversations to have tomorrow about facilities, about school choice. We got some coming up in early December about instructional programs and all things I can't wait to brag about for things that happen at Troy. But as far as if you're just talking about finances, and that's the only reason, again, we balance the two lenses when we're doing our budget. But if this decision is only about finances, there's nobody that could argue that you shouldn't make this move. There's the 4 things that are on the flyer. Again, if you haven't gotten one, please pick one up before you leave. Wait, go back there. Sorry. We did tax impact tonight. Tomorrow is facilities and school choice. Staffing kind of falls in. I had a great conversation, again, I told you a couple weeks ago. And the union, the teachers union at Wynantskill and I are working really hard together, and our union too, trying to come up with a plan of things they've asked for if this happens. And so we're working that out, and we'll have a little agreement in writing very soon. The draft was given out today. There's a few tweaks that we're trying to do to it, but that part of it is really, really great right now, the staffing piece. And tomorrow will be facilities and school choice.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
A couple of comments, and then I do want to talk a little bit about some communication issues, and then we'll get to some questions. I think it's safe to see, not just hear, but actually see the manifestations of how much Mary and John care about kids, their faculty and staff, and the community. Think of it as family. These are hard decisions, ones that are filled with emotion, but also filled with opportunity and hope. Tough economic discussions require honesty of communication and being transparent with everyone. Brian and I have almost 75 years of public school education experience, and I'm here to tell you with zero ambiguity, Dr. Tims's predictions are the best, most optimistic, assuming nothing else changes. Electric bus mandates, Albany helps, and when I say Albany helps, they often don't help very much. Districts like Mary and at Wynantskill, approximately 54% of the districts last budget were projected to see significant and sizable reductions in state aid because of enrollment decline in New York State. I can't predict when that will manifest, but I can tell you, past is prologue, and that is a real scary thing for over half of the school districts in New York State. The difference is they don't have the opportunity or willing partners to consider supporting public education. Rick is the most prolifically talented financial planner in the state, and I don't say that with any embellishment. He is the most knowledgeable expert, but his numbers are optimistic. And I want folks to recognize that there is a crossroads here where reality is going to come 200 miles an hour into that brick wall at NASCAR, and the communities are either going to take control of the wheel and avoid that crash or drive right into it. And that's something that the communities will have to wrestle with. So that bleeding Wynantskill colors and bleeding Troy colors is visible and palpable for folks to consider. The other element that I just feel as though is important, and then we'll get to questions, is there is a lot of conversation coming at people And some of it lands on social media and internet sites. And I think we are all adults and we recognize that social media isn't always accurate in its portrayal. A snippet of a comment out of context can be devastatingly inaccurate. And we've had some of those conversations come up, and we see those, and it is something that I feel compelled to address, not just as an educator, but as a parent and a taxpayer in my community. And there were some comments that, out of context, that Dr. Yodis will not be the superintendent. That's true. By law, only one person can be the superintendent of a district. And if this consolidation moves forward, there can only be one superintendent. That's not unexpected. There can't be two bosses at the same time. It's just not how the system is structured. And what the poster left out was what Mr. Carmelo had said: everyone remains whole. No one loses their job, their employment, their health insurance, their retirement benefits that have accrued. If anything, they've been made more whole because of the commitment to family and keeping folks together. So the statements that she won't be the superintendent is accurate. That's factual, but led individuals that questioned us as consultants, well, will she be unemployed? Will she be out on the street? And those kinds of things. So social media is not always completely accurate. Another issue is Mr. Carmelo has said repeatedly at every forum that Gardner Dickinson will remain a pre-K-8 building. And John had said, well, if enrollment drops to 3 students, then we'd have to make a choice. And the poster and others capitalized at C. They said they're going to close the building, but didn't put it in context. So I would just, as someone that's been around the block a few times and has been subjected to social media interpretations, go to the website hosted by Questar. Thank you, Harry and his team, for being here and for hosting that site to get the actual information. And it's critically important. One of the positive things that has come out is there is additional benefits to this beyond the reorganization aid, beyond the capital project work, and beyond Wynantskill being able to refinance its debt. And we're getting into that as consultants to kind of put that into context. But one of the things that has actually manifested, which wasn't originally part of the conversation, is veterans and firefighters have exemptions in both districts. Those continue in a reorganized district. The STAR exemptions that many residents have come to rely on for their school taxes also follows them into this conversation. We have to work a little bit of those nuances to make certain of that, but all state aid planning and budgetary conversations regarding firefighters, veterans, and STAR continue in those benefits. The last thing I'm going to say is, and this was a direct conversation and commentary from the students that were in the audience last night. Tomorrow night at Wynantskill, I would imagine there will be some students there because they've expressed the desire to participate. We will make sure that the students speak first, because to speak for the students, which I think as adults we all try to do, the students expressed very significant angst and concern that individuals in the community were portraying their school in a negative light. Students can use their own voice tomorrow to speak on that. And I'm just going to simply say that if students are first in this conversation, then we're going to keep them front and center, and they're going to speak first tomorrow before we get to it. And I don't see anyone under the age of, well, more than 18. So we're going to dispense if they were. I would have approached them and said, hey, do you want to talk before any adults talk? And the students were very clear that they have a lot to say about the value of the education they received at Wynantskill Pre-K-8, at Troy Pre-K-8, and their secondary experiences. And we want to give value to those voices to make certain that that is front and center. Because as adults, as I told them last meeting, sometimes adults can get on a roll, and we need the students to raise their hand and say, Bob, chill out, calm down. So we're going to put them front and center. Next meeting tomorrow night at 5 o'clock for tours, and then 6 o'clock we will start with a conversation on facilities, and then move into school choice. Okay. And with that said, I think that brings us up to date on any potential questions that we've had. And on the handout that's on the front, Troy, WUFSD Feasibility at gmail.com is a dedicated email site. Brian and I are the only ones that see it. As we've said before, we need to know what people are thinking, and the districts both need to hear what people are thinking, but they have no need to know who said it. And so we continue to maintain that confidentiality. We do have an opportunity for anyone that wants to come up and ask questions. And I believe that's the microphone that is ready to go. So if that's the case, we'll turn it over to anyone that wants to come up and ask a question. To the extent that we can answer it tonight, we will. And to the extent that it requires a little bit more study, we will make sure that we respond both to the group on the social media or on the website at Questar BOCES, as well as if an individual wants to hang around and talk with Brian and myself after the meeting. Sometimes folks don't want a public conversation. That's what Brian and I are here to facilitate those kinds of communications. And the last thing I'll say is don't assume that somebody else has already asked that question. There have been a lot already asked, but don't assume that. If it's on your mind, we want to make sure that it gets into our study and to the final document. So please come on up.
I'll go ahead and start, but I won't go to the microphone because that's intimidating to be at a microphone, and I think other people won't go to the microphone. So I'm gonna direct it to panel, myself here speaking. My name is Katrina Dinan. I'm a resident of the Wynantskill Union Free School District. I have 3 questions and then a comment. So my first question is, what is the total number of school-aged eligible children in the Wynantskill School District K through 12? What's the total number? And if you can't answer it tonight, that's fine.
It's about 400.
400. So if the number of children that attend minus the little red, the 238, right? So it's 400 minus 238. It's not necessarily those in 9 through 12, but those that are eligible that may be going to private schools or, correct?
It's about 400.
Okay, so
Yeah,
there's
I can give you
400
the exact number, but
total school-age eligible children in the Wynantskill Union Free School District, K-12, correct? And then, what is the total number of employees in the Wynantskill? You don't have to answer it tonight, that's okay, but I'm just.
about 75.
And then just a procedural question. My understanding there's a straw vote in January timeframe, correct?
Not a straw vote, it'll be a petition.
And so can you explain what that means?
Sure.
You want me to do it? You want to do it?
We'll both do it. How's that sound? So as part of the process and part of our formal study will be a delineation of the process moving forward to move this forward for what both communities can consider. Part of that, and we meet just about bi-weekly with representatives of BOCES, the districts, the consulting firm, and state ed, and there's a petition process to gauge interest, okay? And then from there, if ordered, then there will be an actual vote within the Wynantskill community only, like an actual, just like we had yesterday. And one of the conversations that has come up as recently as today is what about individuals who are residents of Wynantskill, but may not be local at the time of the vote? I can just take us back in time to the optimization study last winter and early spring. It was made very clear from the optimization study that residents did not want a February, March vote because many of them were out of town, Florida, Arizona, etc. So that's going to be part of the conversation. If it gets to that point, petitions start first, report finishes, public presentation, if possible, if needed, petitions. If the petitions drive support, then an actual referendum for Wynantskill only voters. So the little red families there that send the students to the district, they are not eligible to vote.
Right. And so is that final vote a binding vote?
Final and binding is, ultimately the final decision rests with the commissioner based on everything that happens before that. But if the community supports it, if the report recommends it, and the committee, the petitions support it, and the boards of ed order a vote in Wynantskill, and the Board of Ed supports a consolidation on Troy, and then it goes to Dr. Cruz at BOCES, who will give it the thumbs up or thumbs down, or ask for more information, and then from there it goes to the Commissioner of Ed, Dr. Rosa, and then from there, Dr. Rosa can order a consolidation as early as the next July, but indications are if that timeline occurs, it would occur in July of 2027.
So I ask this because a lot of people would say that what the residents of the Wynantskill Union Free School District want doesn't really matter. So if the final binding, I'll call it that, vote, the residents say no, will it still go up the chain and still then be, the commissioner can say, nope, it's gonna go ahead?
I don't see that scenario as realistic. We talked about that at, I believe, the last meeting. A resident asked, could the district be just taken over? That seems unlikely. However, if the district becomes insolvent, which Dr. Timms' projections suggest somewhere around 2027, 2028, or with multiple 6.4% increases, the reality is you will become both fiscally insolvent and instructionally insolvent, and I would not wish that on any community, because there's no telling what the commissioner or the state assembly or the state senate would do. They have an obligation to provide an appropriate public education. It's guaranteed in the New York State Constitution, and if a district is unable to do that, the state has taken over other districts for other reasons. Academic insolvency and fiscal insolvency could certainly be on the table. I can't predict that, but if the voters say no, they're then saying yes to substantial cuts and reductions in services. And I would ask residents, and I'm happy to talk about it, if the answer is no to this, then by default you're saying yes to eliminating everything that the optimization study of the community values. Small class sizes, family, keeping GD open.
So then-
And you're saying yes to this at least 6.5% increase.
So here's my comment, because listening to Dr. Yotis made me feel very angry. And angry because last year it was an optimization study, which sounded like we're gonna come in and assess the district. Everything's great, but we're gonna assess the district to see what can we do better. And out of that came, oh, so sorry, you people are screwed. Here's your choice. Your choice is Troy. Now, do I have a problem with Troy? No. My husband graduated from Troy. My kids went to Troy. So the problem isn't Troy. The problem is not being fully informed for all of these years on what was really going on. Because, to be quite honest, when Dr. Fennell was there, her motto was, and it's cliche, but it takes a village to raise a child. But I think that if the community was aware, we would provide. But when the community is not aware, we can't provide. So it's unfortunate now that the community's choice is, here, it's Troy or nothing, because really, that's where we're at, Troy or nothing. And hey, this looks great, because we don't, our taxes will be less and all that, but there's other things, it impacts so many other things. And no one's talking about that or you know, how it impacts Little Red, or how it impacts Eagle Park, or how it impacts the town of North Greenbush. Nobody's talking about that. It's just, here it is, so sorry.
If I can just interject, I would respectfully disagree that no one's talking about it, because they are talking about it. They're talking about it to us,
No, I,
they're talking about it to the districts, and they're saying, and we interviewed hundreds of individuals in January, February, March, April, May, and in June, and it wasn't a singular event that led the optimization study to say pursue another pathway. It was overwhelmingly clear that the sustainability of Wynantskill was in grave peril. And then we looked at other options.
I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is the community, it wasn't communicated to the community for years.
The community didn't know what's been going on for years, and then all of a sudden this came.
Right, so what I'm saying is, what's difficult for the community is to all of a sudden be in this place, and the place really has no choice. That's all it is. So, for us, and I'm only speaking for me, but a lot of anger, a lot of distrust, and our focus is on our kids. Whether we physically have children attending the school or not, our focus has always been the kids. We have always cared about these kids. But I'm just saying, I'm commenting, I'm not asking for anything, any answer back, but just letting you know that just sitting here has made me very angry.
And I agree, and one of the things we talked about throughout this process has been that these are really hard decisions. And there's a lot of emotion, and everyone in this room, and even not in this room, has the right to feel how they feel. And I feel anger too, and I've only been engaged with this community since last fall, coming in to work with the staff and work with the students and the community members. There is a lot of angst over this, and there's certainly a fair amount of blame that can be placed on the feet of adults, Senate, Assembly, Board of Regents, communities, board members, current, past, future superintendents, where they make really good decisions in the moment that have lasting implications. And that's why I give John and Mary a lot of credit. And those of you who are here tonight, because there's about 40 folks in this room, maybe 35. Last meeting there were 78. There's a lot of folks that are engaged, but not at these events. They do share those concerns with us, and that's our hope as we schedule these meetings to get more individuals. I appreciate your comments, Katrina, and I agree. It is something that is filled with anger and apprehension and fear. And reaching a financial DEFCON 1 in 2027, 20 months, maybe 30 months, maybe 40 months, unless the community makes a trajectory change, that is a reality that is going to happen. And that should be alarming to everyone. And I appreciate your comments, and hopefully you can give me a little bit more specifics when we break up, because I know you have a ton of experience and longevity in the community. And that will help us inform and guide future conversations with both communities. How about anybody else?
I have one question.
Please.
I'm a resident of Wynantskill for going on 50 years now. Both of my kids went to Wynantskill, both of them went to Troy High. They both excelled in both school districts. And I can't say anything bad about the city of Troy School District. I was a firefighter in the city of Troy. When I was a fire captain in charge of fire prevention, I inspected every single school building in the city of Troy, Lansingburg, Catholic High, all the schools in the city of Troy. This was the most sovereign school district, the city of Troy. Better than Lansingburg, as far as what we saw as firefighters. My only question now is, I'm not 60, I want, unfortunately, I'm going to sound selfish by saying this, I want what's best for me. I'm sorry, my kids are gone, my grandkids are older. I had 2 grandkids that grew up and went to Troy School District all the way through Troy High. One's finished with college, one's still in college. And my question is, why are we gonna have this vote? I am now a snowbird, and I don't want it. I've seen that happen over the years where they would schedule, school boards would schedule votes when they knew that people like me, retired people, weren't around to vote. And I want that to happen.
So the plan is, if you don't mind, Bob, so Bob just explained the petition process because of that question. That petition process will probably be December into mid-January-ish, and there's a prescribed routine we have to follow for that. The vote itself, we're looking at the end of March. The reason that is because as you saw in Mary's presentation today, not so much with the Troy School District, but for the Wynantskill School District, the May budget vote will be very different if it's a no or if it's a yes, right? So if the end of March, we haven't scheduled it yet, but that's what we're looking at. I mean, suppose it might go into early April, but it has to be early enough so that if that vote goes down, and I'm not trying not to, I don't want to speak for Mary, but I know that we've had conversations and their board would have to decide, is that 6.4 enough? Or does that have to go higher than that? And then the community's gonna have to decide how high they're willing to go for a supermajority. If it's a yes, then all those financial problems that Mary described, and I don't blame the anger. I don't know if the anger should be directed at Mary, and I don't know, maybe it wasn't, but yeah, the anger's at that situation. That's a tough situation for any district to be in. She's navigated it brilliantly, in my opinion, right? I mean, this is someone I was going to wait till tomorrow, and I'll say it again tomorrow. Mary's the one person in this whole scenario that really doesn't benefit. Now Bob already said, I've already talked to her. She'll have a job, and we'll find something for her. She's not going to lose salary or anything like that. But she didn't know any of that. She embarked on this optimization study, and then the optimization study, after all the interviews and all the reports and all the studying, says you should look for a merger with Troy because here's all the benefits of that. She meets with me, and we meet with state ed, and we meet with all the people, and she says, let's do this for the students of Gardner-Dickinson. That's why she did it. She's not benefiting from this. In fact, at that point, she could have been the one that lost her job. She didn't do anything other than do what's best for the kids and that district, right? So she'll have to decide at that point. But if the vote is a yes, then all of that goes away, right? So it's got to be enough time so that she can then develop a new budget, but also late enough so that the snowbirds aren't in Florida. We'll work on that. We have to see the legalities of it. If they're allowed, then we'll do them for sure.
What state ed has advised us in this process is that it's just like a regular school vote. And we would make the expectation that there isn't a process. We'll confirm that with state ed with our next meeting, which is, I think, next week, Wednesday, to confirm the absentee voting process. The petition piece is new to the state from last year. And by extension, I would make the argument that absentees are part of all school votes, so that would occur, but the process has not yet been decided. It's likely to be a local controlled issue. If you request it, then Mary and her staff will make sure that absentee ballots get out. I think there was another question in the back.
Yeah, I just want to ask, so as you look around the room tonight, maybe this is just a comment as well, but I noticed 10 people maybe outside of the board and outside of administrators. So I know we're talking about Facebook and where the true truth is, right? But are we doing anything as both boards to share any of this information that's pretty powerful on those platforms? Because I know, yeah, you can go to the website and you can go to BOCES, but people aren't going to do that. We need to be realistic about where people are getting their information from for these types of decisions. And I'm wondering what's being done to be able to provide this information on those resources and on those platforms so people do get that information rather than saying you got to go to BOCES. People aren't going to do that. right? So I think as both boards, we need to figure out what's the best way to share this information so people really understand where this is at and how powerful it is, and get it right from the source rather than their neighbor or somebody who's just posting on a comment just to post on a comment.
Yeah, it's a good comment. So the flyer was out there, shared on those pages, Josh, but yeah, some of the more
I
details.
mean, some of those graphs,
Some of the
John,
more details
I
should
mean,
be out there. Yeah,
People, that's gonna be hard for people to talk to, and it's gonna be word of mouth, and it's gonna get,
yeah. I like the
it's gonna
idea.
be a game of telephone. I think going right to the heart of those sources and putting that information out there clears up a lot of ambiguity and a lot of rumors and hearsay, rather than saying, go to the BOCES website and look at it for yourselves.
And I
Yeah, we'll
think-
talk about that tomorrow. I like
Yeah,
that.
and I think part of our process is to get community input, because we did not want to assume that residents in either community would fall in one side or the other of the potential solutions. So as we get into this, we have a running list of both questions and the information that we have to answer. And
Sure.
some of them are quick, easy answers.
Yeah, sure.
Unlike the absentee ballot is, we want to give only factual information that we can verify. As John had mentioned, when the number first came out, we went back and verified with state ed multiple times at multiple levels, because Troy is a small city school district, Mary is a union-free school district. There's a whole set of regulatory differences. So everything that we're saying to this point so far, we can verify that we have either written confirmation from BOCES or statutory confirmation, so that we can say this is factually accurate. But the communication plan is a great suggestion. Sir?
Eric Denny, I live on east, I throw rocks to the Dickens.
Please don't do
Let's
that.
not do
No,
that.
no.
Eggs and
My
Halloween.
arm couldn't do that anyway. There's, every meeting, there's new information because it's a living, breathing, dynamic situation. There's some static information, there's some static thoughts and processes, and then with the new information, there's new ideas. To Ms. Diamond's point, there is some anger, and quite frankly, and I'm not saying it's this board or anything, historically, the Wynantskill board has been a little lacking in communications or tumultuous in some of the relationships, but we elect them and they do the job that they can do, and if they don't, it's our right, privilege to change the board if we need to. That being said, what happened, what the world was like, when I say the world, our world, 24 months ago is different than it was 12 months ago. It's different than it is today, with the uncertainty on a national level that pushes down to the state. And we all know what the state is like, no offense to any state employees, that, you know, it moves at the rate that it wants to move at and does what it wants to do despite, you know, black and white research and hard data that says, here's the right decision, and the state does what it wants. So there's a limit, I think, from a perspective that it does take a community to raise our children. And I know from our perspective, we're lucky enough, we only have one child, and we were able to make the decision financially and as a family, for family reasons, that my wife didn't have to go back to work after she had our child. And she was able to stay home, be a mom, raise our child. And that continued when my child went into Gardner Dickinson. My wife volunteered in the building. So she was part of that, you know, giving, the community giving to the school free of charge until Dr. Lewis needed a body, and that changed slightly. But nevertheless, you know, her drive and her support didn't change. This is such I came from a district that's not, I don't know, 200 kids in my 220 kids in my graduating class. Largest class prior, largest class since. When it came time for her to first school decision, we did the tours of places, and the first things out of my mouth was, can I go back to high school when we toured Troy? Because the programs you have here, I mean, I came from a nice centralized district, we had opportunities, but the opportunities available, not just in Troy, but in some of the neighboring districts are just incredible. I'd love to come back to school to participate. But my daughter made the decision to go to April Park. We didn't fight that. We supported that. We talked about it. And my perspective is that my neighbor, literally my neighbor, because we are the first house in the district, pays a third to a half, somewhere in there, of what I do for school taxes. And their children, because they're in Little Red, are educated in the same building. And it's just a matter of, I don't want to have to provide another $1,600 a year on a projection for taxes. So for me, I enjoy the school, the small school, the environment, the community, but at some point in time, we have to acknowledge that not just me, but people on fixed income and everything else, there is no way in the face of the earth that we could support. That 6.5 in reality is either gonna turn into a building closure, district closure, as Bob alluded to, or it's realistically 8% or 10%. And then the residents are gonna vote it down. Then what? Every time when you prepare a budget, you have to prepare an austerity budget proposal saying, if you vote this budget down, this is what it's gonna be. The last one that I think we did was a $50,000 difference. That's nothing. Then you might as well just approve the budget. You know, other districts at other point in time, because of the math and the whatnot, it's substantial. But ours, because we're so small, is $50,000. So what's that gonna do? We're gonna pay now or pay later. And we just have to, as a community, understand that, do we like it? Maybe not. But as long as we can maintain our community within a larger Troy community, that is hopefully a better, easier pill to swallow, so to speak, than what the state could do to us, quite frankly. So,
Thank you. Your last sentence is actually what I was going to say when you were done, but you ended up saying it. We can have both, right? And that's, you know, if we didn't say that, you know, we should start adding that. You can still have your small community school over in Gardner Dickinson. We have it throughout Troy, right? We have all little neighborhood community schools that have volunteers that come in, just like you're talking about, right? And you would just keep your community open there. This is the way to do that. Unfortunately, like you just said, 6.5 becomes 10 and then gets voted down. That's where you risk losing that school community. Thank you.
How about anyone else? This is the point where the teacher just sits still and some student goes, ugh, right before a dismissal. What we'll do is we'll conclude, our next session is tomorrow. Tours at the building are 5 o'clock, correct?
5:15.
5:15, excuse me, 5:15. Student-led tours of the building. We invite everyone to come, bring a friend, bring your kids, bring anybody that has an interest. 6 o'clock, we'll start with a conversation on potential facility work. Dr. Yodis and her team and Mr. Carmelo and his team have looked at potential needs within the Gardner Dickinson building that would be eligible for 98% state reimbursement. There's a process for that, just like regular votes. And then at 7 o'clock will be a conversation about the implications of tuitioning and school choice. The one part that I will say that I've said in a number of forums, but I did not say tonight, is as part of the conversation, Mary has to simultaneously create a spending plan for next year while this is occurring. And we want to make sure there's a clear line between both of those, but the governor will come out with her budget, and then the Senate and the Assembly will do whatever they do to get the budget, hopefully on time. And then Mary is going to have to turn it around quickly to present a spending plan to the community, which is why the conversation about the petition and then this reorganization is going to occur timely. So there's going to be a lot of information that's coming fast and furious, and that will guide Mary's conversation. So there's going to be a lot that's going to come at everybody. The gentleman's point about enhanced communication is spot on. We'll have some conversations tonight and tomorrow with the leadership team to make sure we get to that. And then if you have any other questions that pop into your mind, absentee ballots was the first time we've heard that, so thank you for bringing that forward. But Troy, UFSD, feasibility@gmail.com.
It's on the back of the flyer.
On the back of the flyer, I'm gonna have it tattooed, and we'll keep getting that out. And every conversation, every thought is valuable and important to help guide us, get the information to the folks who are gonna make these important decisions within the next 60 days? 60 days with Thanksgiving and Christmas, holidays, New Year's. So it's gonna come fast and furious, and we thank everyone for coming out tonight, and we'll hopefully see you and many more folks tomorrow at Wynantskill at 5:15. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.